Don't say anything you don't want to say. All right, we're back in open. We're gonna move the consent agenda. Thank you. Seconded.
Let's recess.
5.2.
5.2.2. Okay. So we'll move that down to an item. 11.3. Okay, anything else to be pulled from the consent agenda? Seeing none, could I have someone move as amended? Thank you. Seconder. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Any business arising from the minutes? Okay. We're now on to EAD committee recommendations. Do you want to do these each? 7.1.1 Squamish Access Society Sun Shelter. Seconder, Director Demare, comments? Any opposed? Motion carries. And now this is Area C and Pemberton only can vote on these items. 7.1.2, which is a request for funding for the visitor center's summer staff. Would either of you like to move that? Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Richmond. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And 7.2.1 is a request for decision. Also, only Pemberton and Area C can vote on this. Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Richmond. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And are these okay? So the first two that's of 7.2.2, which is correspondence with action. We can move the first two that's together, and only Director Mack and Director Richmond are moving and seconding, and all in favor. Any opposed? Motion carries. And the third that of this motion is that funding be granted, et cetera, et cetera. Director Mack, Director Richmond, all in favor. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. That was fun. Never get to say et cetera, et cetera.
Et cetera.
We see people gotta get it.
I didn't have to yell that. Okay. So we're gonna move 8.1, which is the adoption of establishment amendment bylaw 1806-2023. Go ahead. You're moving it. Seconder, Director Stoner. Any comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. 8.2 is a request for decision regarding the Pinecrest Estates land use contract discharge. No, we'll wait on that one. We've got, that's a meaty one we want to get into. Should we do 8.3?
We can start the same.
Adoption. We've had this conversation 3 times. Everyone good? Okay. Moved by Director Herford, seconded by Director Stoner. This is the adoption of the Area C zoning amendment bylaw 1742-2022. Comments? Did you have any comments, Director Mack?
No, I just find it odd. I would think that the Area C director would move this.
You can move it.
It's already been moved and seconded.
Okay.
Withdraw my seconding.
Okay. Moved by Director Mack. Seconded by Director Herford. I was just moving quickly because of the people I've seen putting their hands up. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. CAO verbal update. Did you have less than 4 minutes?
Yes, I do, Chair. Just one item, and that's to ask the board to convene a special meeting. We're proposing the 6th of June. I know it's D-Day. Is that the concern? Is that the?
No.
Okay. And if not, we could look at the, I think 7th was the other date we looked at, but
My face goes like this because of the council day,
oh, well, okay, well, that's on.
But-
Which next, June
June 6th.
Okay, no, that doesn't work. Does June,
Can we, you need a date in the resolution.
ideally, if we could find a date, would the other date we were looking at was the 7th, would the 7th work?
Before or after EAD?
Depending on travel of our electoral area directors, it could work.
Sorry, what are we saying, the eighth?
Wednesday, the
Wednesday,
7th.
the 7th.
Not available.
I am not.
I'm not.
Oh. Maybe
What time is the meeting?
Oh, no, I'm good on the 7th.
Wednesday the seventh.
Like, how long a meeting are we talking about? Do we really have to?
I have a 6 AM.
I would say we're probably looking at no more than 30 minutes.
Okay.
No more than 30 minutes?
Yeah.
Can we do it on a lunchtime?
Last time in place for-
What is all lunch?
Do it right now.
So, yeah.
Right now, yeah.
I mean, if it's only 30 minutes, can we not schedule it for like 8:30 or 9 in one of those days that the CAO suggested and see if we can get quorum?
Yeah, how many people can do the 7th? At some point, 30 minutes during the day of the 7th. You guys have EAD.
Start at 10:30.
No, what if we tack it on to the end of the EAD?
Yeah, no, it'd be better
What time
to,
is
it'd be better
it?
to stick it at the beginning.
What time does it start? 10:30?
10:30.
Well, what if we did 10 o'clock? You guys get here for 10 o'clock
Yeah.
and then you can,
No, no,
is that good?
I could do it.
Yeah,
What time?
10 o'clock on Wednesday the seventh.
Sure.
Okay, I can maybe do it. It depends on whether I'm done, like I'm presenting at a conference, so it depends on whether I'm, and it's all, this is virtual.
Yes. Except the EAD will all be here in the room, which
Sounds
is fine.
10 o'clock, yep, maybe.
No?
We just need quorum.
Yeah, so not everyone's gonna be here.
Yeah.
Fine with that?
Yes, yep.
Everyone good with that?
I mean, we need 6 people.
Yeah.
So you have 4 here,
Yeah.
sure,
And me,
and you,
and
it's 5.
someone else in this room will be there. We
Is
can
that
do
right?
this.
That's good.
You will be
Okay.
here, your choice.
You can have it.
All right.
So we got 5.
I'm just hoping we keep talking for a minute so that Craig's 4 minutes is actually.
Yeah, I'm really,
So I have some comments.
I'm gonna call resolution.
I'm going to have a meeting on Wednesday, June the 7th
Okay.
at 10, and it'd be a blended meeting, or whatever they're called.
Hybrid.
Hybrid.
All right, seconder. Comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Did you want to oppose that?
I wanted to, yeah. You win.
3 minutes and 48 seconds.
Gabrielle.
I will call a recess for this, for our lunch, and please be back here with 3 minutes to spare before 1 o'clock, because we have 2 delegations at 1 o'clock. Thank you.
That's it. I'm gonna say it, we have to have.
Yours.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. We have Jonathan Harima and Amber Turno here for a delegation from Destination BC. Can you hear us? Give us a thumbs up if you can hear us.
Hello.
Hello, Destination BC.
They need to turn up their volume probably. That's always the problem.
They're number 4. Can you hear us, Amber and Jonathan?
Hi, sorry, computers are too advanced for me, so I can't figure out how to use them yet.
Well, that's okay. We're here. We can hear you. You can hear us.
Yes,
Thank you for being here today. You have 10 minutes to present and 5 minutes for questions. So let's turn it over to you.
okay. Well, thank you very much. Since we have 10 minutes, we'll go pretty fast. And of course, the Q&As at the end are great, so we'll call out next slide when we're ready to move on to the next slide. Okay. So thank you for taking the time to listen to our presentation today. I'm Jonathan Harima, and I'm with the Vancouver Coast and Mountains region in Destination BC, and I'm with Amber Turnow from Substrate Studios. We're here representing the Sea to Sky Destination Management Council, and we'll be discussing our marketing portion of the Destination Education Initiative. Before we begin, we're grateful to be on the shared unceded territory of the Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, and Squamish peoples. We respect and commit to a deep consideration of their history, culture, and stewardship and voice in all the work that we do. Next slide. For some of you that may need a bit of a refresher, the Sea to Sky Destination Management Council is made up of a group of organizations that are working together to implement the Sea to Sky Destination Development Strategy. This includes the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District. This council is working to move the Sea to Sky Destination Development Strategy forward, which includes the Destination Education Initiative and the Don't Love It to Death marketing program and portion of that initiative. Next slide, please. So we've identified pain points over the past few years and who our audience is. The next step was to create the concept and the campaign messaging, which has been ongoing and what we've been doing. We worked with Origin, which is a Whistler-based creative agency, and they helped us develop the content and the concept called Don't Love It to Death. It drives home the message that increased recreation and travel is putting a strain on the environment, communities, residents, and the guest experience and infrastructure in the Sea to Sky and many areas throughout the province. We want residents and visitors to think about the implications of their behaviors, conduct themselves respectfully, and realize that they are responsible for the protection of the environment, communities, and wildlife in the province. Next slide, please. So I want to just take a moment here for you to see these photos and digest them. These are all pictures of people loving our favorite places to death. This is just a small smattering of issues that are impacting the communities in the province. And many of these photos are all taken from the Sea to Sky. So you can see we have issues that we're trying to solve. Next slide, please. At the same time, we know these problems aren't unique to the Sea to Sky region, as I mentioned, or even BC. Don't Love It to Death is actually not a tagline that we own, but rather a sentiment that has been expressed by many in the media. We are loving some places to death, and a change in our behavior is required. The sentiment has been seen in many headlines over the years. Crisis at the national parks, how people are loving nature to death, hiking reservations to control crowds at BC parks, in danger of being loved to death. And one area that we all know has been loved to death is Joffrey Lakes, which now requires reservations to even visit the park. Next slide, please. As you can see here, we have partnered with some great organizations to help spread this messaging. There are more partners, but this gives you an idea of those groups that are supporting this initiative. All right, next slide, please.
Awesome. So now I'm going to speak to the marketing strategy. So the subcommittee brought me in last fall to develop a bit more of a comprehensive marketing strategy. So we have had a great brand platform or campaign platform, and now we put some more concrete foundation to it. So in the next slide, I'll share with you the consumer journey. So just to give you in the next slide. Thank you. So the consumer journey is hopefully to give you a bit of a snapshot into where this program fits within the broader scope. We know there's lots of amazing organizations like BC Parks, Campers Code, etc., that have incredible how-to content. And so this campaign is really focused at driving awareness about the issues and really creating a desire to take responsibility, be part of the solution. We then do a bit of a warm transfer over to these incredible how-to partners, the BC Adventure Smarts, and so on and so forth. And then our goal as well is to fuel the advocacy that comes from that new knowledge. So there's a lot of people now that have, this great passion for respecting and protecting the corridor. So it's really to harness that. In the next slide, please, just to share, some of the key KPIs here. So, in the awareness piece, our goal is to capture attention and break through the noise. So you'll see that a lot of our marketing is a bit more disruptive than you might see from a normal DMO or other organizations. And then that desire to change, our goal is really to engage people, to create a conversation and nurture that conversation and build those bridges with the public, whether they be residents or visitors. And then finally, advocacy. So amplifying what others are saying and incentivizing ways for people to engage in that conversation and create societal change. So moving on to the next slide. Perfect. So again, the goal being capture attention, engage, and amplify. So moving on to the next slide, please. Perfect. So now I'm going to show a few examples of the program at work. And so these are some of the marketing tactics that have been implemented since last summer when we had our soft launch. So on the next slide, if you want to, yeah, perfect. So we had print activations, so also billboards on Highway 99, BC Ferries posters, and we did some purchasing sponsored content with Daily Hive. We also launched our social media, and I'll get into a little bit more of that in a few slides. On the next slide, just a little bit more diving into some of the new content that we have. We've developed a blog that has more long form storytelling to get into the meat of some of these issues. So really a lot of our social content is sort of bite-sized and teasers about what these issues are. And our blog allows us to have more information, talk to different people and put a face to the names of some of the people that are affected, whether they be search and rescue personnel, whether they be Indigenous communities, etc. So moving on to the next slide, we really spent a lot of time over the last 7 or so months really expanding our social media approach and creating a consistent content calendar, and really spent most of our time increasing organic reach at this point. It's been very grassroots and utilizing video as a huge way to generate reach, just knowing the algorithms and how everything works. And then also really open to content brainstorming with different partners, whether it be DMOs or our other how-to partners. If you move on to the next slide, we have established an ambassador program, which we're really excited about. So we've handpicked a number of outdoor influencers and people from various aspects, whether it be bikers or paddlers or people that have different lived experiences, all with a shared value of stewardship. And so they're sharing their stories, not only to raise awareness about the issues, but also to show what good behavior looks like. If you move on to the next slide, we're taking a seasonal approach. So, in concert with our partners, understanding what those key insights are, what times of year some of this information is most resonant with the public, and developing content to help tell those stories. And on the next slide, we're working on really that building that stakeholder awareness. And so we've developed a toolkit package that we sent out to all of our partners on the Sea to Sky Destination Management Partner and beyond, or Management Council and beyond, to ultimately provide people with a self-serve digital place where they can find assets, information and background on the campaign, and hopes that they can also begin participating in the campaign through their own marketing channels, whether that be engaging with our content or creating their own and joining that conversation. And so there's a full Google Drive package with all the information, as well as a 2-page information piece that hopefully provides background on not only the campaign, but how everybody can get involved in a way that makes sense to their personal organization. We've also launched a new website over the last, I believe it was 2 months ago. So it's quite robust. It has a lot more information about the issues and very specific calls to action about how people can learn and become the change they want to see in their communities as well. So I encourage you, if you haven't already, to take a look at that website and explore further. And finally, we have developed a bit of a positioning hero video, which focuses on user-generated content. It's really meant to drive that awareness. And it launched actually last week, just before the long weekend. And we've had some really great response so far. I think we've already hit organically close to 20,000 views of this video. And, you know, lots of really good responses and conversations happening, people talking about setting up cleanups and how they can get involved. And so this is really what we want to be the catalyst for that conversation.
There's a whole bunch of crap right underneath where I'm standing. Solo cups, swim gear, lots of sunglasses, lighters, vapes, weed grinder, hats, beer bottles, lots of beer cans, got lots of boat paddles.
Sorry, I wasn't sure.
Amber, we're just gonna unshare and then reshare and see if we can.
Okay.
get it.
Okay.
Another time.
Thank you.
No worries.
Were you able to see it on your feed?
No,
No.
no, but if there isn't time today, we encourage everyone to click on the link and you can watch that video. And it's also on our social media channels.
Oh, here we go.
So we're gonna
It might be
watch it.
happening.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of crap right underneath where I'm standing. Solo cups, swim gear, lots of sunglasses, lighters, vapes, weed grinder, hats, beer bottles, lots of beer cans, got lots of boat paddles.
The street bag is he taking? Oh my gosh.
Beautiful day at Cat Lake, except for all this garbage.
Awesome. Thank you. Glad the tech worked out. And we just, we partnered with Topo Films and Squamish. I just want to give them a shout out because they've been really great to work with on this video and our.
It's like we had an accidental dance party ready to happen.
Perfect. And with that, yeah, so that's, with that, I'll hand that back over to Jonathan to sort of finish off where we're headed next.
All right, thank you. Next slide, please. All right, so what are we working on going forward? As you've seen, what we've been building out has been quite robust, and we are anticipating continuing building out more assets to service the issues that we're trying to address. Next slide, please. So one of the areas of opportunity that we're working on now is signage. We're working to build out a signage component that will help educate user groups that maybe need an additional reminder once they get to the location. As many of you know, if you were outdoors this past weekend, I snowshoed and I saw people out there with their Nikes and t-shirts and shorts. So still a lot of work to do. We need more reminders so people can see them a little bit more front and center. Next slide, please. All right, so here we'll continue to work with our partners to help amplify the message. We'll also look to continue to understand new insights from our data and research to inform future decision-making. Now that we've had the campaign in a more robust approach and a more robust way to help build out website insights from the user groups that are using the website and our social media, we can make then informed decisions about what groups we need to target going forward. And next slide, please. Did we do it under 10 minutes? Are we that good? Please tell me yes.
Any question? Go ahead. Comment, go ahead.
I'll go ahead with this.
Yeah.
You mentioned that at Joffrey Lake, and you said, and we even need reservations there or something, as though it's, maybe we shouldn't need something like that. But what does that point to? It seemed to me that that's saying we don't have enough places for people to go. You know, the Upper Squamish Valley is within my area, and there are problems there every weekend through the summer. And one of the problems is that people get attracted there because we market things. We're very good at marketing, very good at saying, BC is beautiful, come and take a look at it, that sort of message. And so we got hundreds of people coming, and a lot of the people that come don't read your messaging, don't care about the things that you care about, and there are problems. And we don't have the tools, we don't have enough enforcement. I'm not blaming the RCMP, I'm not blaming anybody, there just isn't enough enforcement. And I think we need that. Because when I look at what you're trying to do, I see it as a generational project. This is not something you're going to do in 2 years. You know, I was looking for somewhere in there where you're getting into the schools. You need to be there. You need to be talking to children. And we need to wait until they're, you know, they'll have an impact on their parents. And then when they get a bit older, they're educating their own children. But that's the sort of length of time that I think you're looking at. And, you know, we continuing with the marketing, that's fine. And continuing with what you mentioned, cleanup. We have a shoreline cleanup plan for a couple of weeks. And I know that the people that come and clean up that shore are not going to be the people that throw garbage around. They're going to be the people that already got the message. And they're going to be picking up other people's garbage. I also know that the people going out into places like the Upper Squamish don't care. They'll go up there with their trunk full of firewood ready to light a fire when we're not supposed to be lighting fires. We go up there because they know that there's no enforcement. They know that once they get clear of the town, clear of residences, that they can do as they please. And we've got to keep that in mind, because in a way, you're preaching to the choir. The people, you know, I look at your message and I think, yeah, that's great, but I don't throw beer cans in that. Thank you.
Go ahead.
This is to both of you. Are you familiar with the federal Guardian, First Nations Guardian program?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the provincial initiative that's currently taking place?
Around the Guardian program that's happening in the Squamish Valley area?
No, provincially. Provincially, they funded almost $9 million to train guardians, First Nations. And I'm wondering if Destination BC wouldn't look at that, how that all is all set up, and actually start funding rural areas in BC, just like Tony mentioned. Is it something that Destination BC has looked at all?
Well, we have a very narrow mandate when it comes to what our organization can do as a Crown corporation. So that particular activity would fall out of kind of our area of mandate based on what the minister's mandate letters require, and also to the legislation that governs how our organization works. But to that end, the Guardian program and the Watchman program that are happening throughout the province, we view those as being an incredibly important program that should be funded and, you know, should be unfolding throughout the province in the way that the nations want that program to unfold. Now, on that end, there's another program where I work with other provincial partners on how to find funding for those roles. And we work with the nations to do a lot of that administrative paperwork to move that work forward. So we have worked with Squamish Nation to help move forward the applications and the grant writing and the funding project coordination on that end. So we do work with nations. We've worked with Lillooet, we've worked with others across, you know, the Vancouver Coastal Mountains region, which I'm responsible for overseeing on the destination management side. we want to make sure that we're helping all communities, especially First Nations, move that particular area forward. And so we do work with nations on elevating that need and also helping them apply for that program and for the dollars to support those guardians. So we are working to help move that space forward.
I'm with the Northern SLRD
Okay.
up in the Bridge River Valley. I'm just wondering if you've done that work also with the Area A, Area B, and Lillooet.
Off the top of my head, I'd have to go back and look, so I don't have a firm answer on that, but we're more than happy to do that work.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you want to, if we can work with Patricia, one of the staff members there, we're happy to work with her on that to help move that forward.
Yeah, so I also think that we need to look at a fee for service, so to speak. I mean, I know that they're provincial, like Joffrey's provincial, but still parking, we're missing so much revenue that we could generate in you know, cleanup and jobs and just that whole pay to play. Like, I think the whole corridor needs help when it comes to garbage and litter and the whole love it to death issues. But I still think it goes back to, you know, I think people would maybe have a little bit more respect if they had to pay for the ability to be able to park there and use our parks and playgrounds.
I'm curious, yeah, that's if a discussion has been had with BC Parks around that particular issue.
Yeah, let's put that on the list of things to talk about with the province rather than this is outside of their domain. Thank you both for your presentation. I've been seeing it in my algorithm, so it's definitely reaching out there because my algorithm is small. So thank you for your work on this. And does anyone else have any other comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, just to say I have been seeing it in my Instagram especially, and I appreciate the messaging, and I think you know, it does help the culture change, and it will take a while. I see this as valuable. I see all the partners that came together in this, and I really actually quite like the campaign. I think speaking of some of my colleagues, it's I think one of those yes and things, like this is important, and there's a lot of other pieces that we need to, and I think that's maybe part of what you're hearing here. But personally, I really appreciate the campaign and how it's evolving, and it's great.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that recognition. And to your point, we do recognize as well that there's a lot of components to this particular objective in the Sea to Sky strategy. So the marketing component is just one piece of the Destination Education Initiative. So we are looking at, you know, other activities throughout time in the future and how we can help get this messaging again, kind of in that educational sphere as well. So we can reach them kind of at the beginning of their learning journey. But also too, we understand that, you know, marketing doesn't solve everything, but we're going to try to do this and then build on what we're doing here and then see where we keep going over time.
Director Stone.
Thank you. I also just want to echo some support. I think early on in this process, I vocalized my interest in it also targeting some of the locals as well as the visitors, knowing that both are an issue. And I did see that loud and clear in some of the messaging. So wanted just to thank you for reflecting that back and finding that balance of recognizing that the impacts are coming from multiple different levels in the corridor and trying to find the messaging that's going to resonate. It's tricky, but it's important work. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. We're definitely trying to do our best to reach residents and visitors. And it's, you know, as you can appreciate, this is a unique marketing exercise that really hasn't been done at this, you know, scale for this type of programming anywhere. So it's a lot of this is going to be testing and learning, but we've been really thoughtful about how we want this to be seen and viewed by the right audiences.
Thanks for this. It's really good work. I remember when we first had the conversations at the Destination Development Strategy table about pivoting a little bit away from marketing the region towards management and care for the region. And I think this is a really important shift in focus. And I'm hopeful that it's the first step, and there's many more to follow, which is exciting because I think it means we're doing things differently than we've done in the past. And this is a tremendous start. So congratulations.
Well, thank you. And you know what? I do have a bit of good news for you too. So many of you know Mike Fury, who was the CAO at Whistler for about 10 years. Him and I have been working together on building out a whole destination management framework for implementation at the local government level. So I heard a lot of that loud and clear because I was one of the people that helped build out those strategies along with all the communities. So being part of that original group that really had to understand what the needs were for each community in each area, I took that seriously, and I wanted to see the work that you all identified and how we could both raise that work and then build it out and then solve some problems that communities were experiencing.
Okay, we do have to wrap this up because we have another delegation that was meant to start. So thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you again in the near future. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
So.
You run everything
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you for your patience. Our last delegation ran over. We have seen your presentation. It was included in our package. You have 5 minutes to present the tops of the waves, and then we've got 20 minutes for questions from the board. So I'll turn it over to you. Go ahead.
Okay. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have the Fortis slide deck there? And
Seen your presentation. It was included in our package. You have 5 minutes to present the tops of the waves, and then we've got 20 minutes for questions.
very good. I'll go through this fairly quickly, obviously.
We need more of that.
And the guy.
I can do this in 5 minutes. Okay, next slide. I'll do a very quick overview. I think most of you are familiar with the basics of what we call the EGP project. I'd like to maybe focus on what activities are planned for 2023, and then I can talk very briefly about 2 temporary use permit applications that we're working through with the District of Squamish, and some community engagement. Next slide. So the basic elements of the Fortis BC EGP project, which is intended to provide natural gas to the wood fiber LNG plant, 50 kilometers of gas pipeline, most of it in the Squamish area, likely half of it in the SLRD, the other half within the District of Squamish, a compressor station located at the wood fiber LNG site, and a 9-kilometer tunnel under the Squamish estuary. Workforce lodge and construction laydown yard are proposed as temporary use permits with the district. Next slide, please. So in 2023, the tunnel activity would be to mobilize the tunnel boring machines at both the wood fiber and the Squamish ends of the tunnel, which is on the BC Rail property at the industrial site. A tunnel boring machine is planned to be delivered into Squamish around mid-June. It'll be large. It'll be accompanying other pieces of the tunnel boring mobilization equipment, and it will be trucked up to the BC Rail site. on the pipeline side, we're planning to do upgrades to the Mamquam River Forest Service Road and up through the Squamish Indian River Valley roads, and begin that work in July, ongoing through the rest of the year. And there will be planned to do some clearing and right-of-way grading also this year. There won't be any pipe installation, that'll be next year. But what we call early works. The Workforce Accommodation Lodge, and I've got pending TUP approval. If it's approved in July, I know August everyone's away, but say July through September, we would then proceed with some site clearing and grading, and it's located on a map on the next slide. Next slide, or a couple slides. I won't dwell on this. This is just a bit of a historical context of how we've arrived at the workforce accommodation site that we've chosen. Next slide. This is an artist rendering of what the accommodation site would look like with its fully built out 600 pillows, located north of the Powerhouse Springs Road in the Mamquam area. It's in the district of Squamish, but on a property owned by Lafarge Canada, a full service lodge that's intended to provide medical, obviously food services, and be able to contain workers for 2 years. Next slide. This is a temporary construction laydown yard, which would be proposed at the corner of Powerhouse Springs Road and the Mamquam River Forest Service Road, still in that Mamquam area. So the idea would be the workers stay at the lodge, they come down to get their material and equipment just down the road at this laydown yard in the morning, and then for the most part head up to the Indian River Valley area to do the work. So it would mitigate traffic through town and that type of thing. The next slide. This is just an overall view. You can see Highway 99 on the left, Mamquam River Forest Service Road, and the relationship between these two sites, the construction laydown site being the yellow triangle, and then further up the purple square, or I guess it's a square, being the proposed workforce lodge. The next slide, please. And this is the last one. These are some folks that we're in communication with. Squamish Canyon, again, I'm meeting this morning with those folks, attempting to move forward a number of coordinating issues to do with their project and ours. A lot of recreational users and other businesses in that Mamquam area, very busy, as we all know, informal users as well as formal. We've been meeting a lot with a number of those users so that we can coordinate activities, possibly enhance some trails when we're done, and make sure that the public is inconvenienced as little as possible. Meeting with some schools, and the community table, which is a group of agencies and organizations in Squamish. And I better stop there because I think my 5 minutes is up, but willing to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Questions? Chris?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, and there's been some confusion lately about who is paying for the pipeline.
Wood fiber.
Okay, fully paid for. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. Thanks for the presentation, Gord. I'm just curious, there's been changes in the timeline that's proposed for incoming workforce and the number of folks who are expected to come into community. And I expect also potentially have regional impacts, especially for Area D, Britannia Beach, Furry Creek, given that workforce accommodation isn't quite yet sorted. So I'm just wondering if you can clarify the timeline of the incoming workforce based on the timeline you just showed there. It looks like June is going to start ramping up. How many folks do you expect to be coming in for workforce and at what time?
Great. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Stoner. So we know that there's concern about construction workers using local accommodations in town. And so even though I've mentioned some early construction works starting this summer, those workers will not be staying in local accommodations. They've been told to stay elsewhere. They will start to use local accommodations in the fall, which is after the peak tourist season, and when accommodations in hotels and campgrounds would be more available. Starting next year, when pipeline construction starts, about a third of the construction workers will access the pipeline site from the Indian River Valley, from the Indian Arm, excuse me, to the south end of the pipeline construction area. So about a third of the workers will stay accommodated in the Lower Mainland, will access the southerly end of the pipeline construction area on a daily basis from that direction. So we're trying to minimize the number of workers that actually need to come and reside within the district area. Next year and the year after are when the peak construction workforces will arrive, topping out at somewhat around 600 when you add in the pipeline and the tunnel and the facilities workers. And we've got a graph, although not in my presentation, we can certainly forward a histogram for your graphic information if you want me to follow up with that.
Thank you, that's helpful. And can I just clarify, are you providing living out allowances to those folks who are starting work in June?
Yes.
And where do you expect them to stay if not in Squamish?
The Lower Mainland.
Thank you.
Thanks. Does construction of a work camp inside municipal boundaries require municipal approval?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a process that will go through Squamish Council at some point?
Yes, we made application late last fall. We've been working with staff. We've all been spending a lot of time, including district staff. We're providing several more plans and documents that they require in order to prepare their staff report for a hopeful committee of the whole meeting July 11th. And then after that, council will then decide the next steps. But the reason for the need for a temporary use permit is that the anticipated use that we're planning for is not contemplated with the current zoning.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just, a couple of summers ago, I live in Lillooet. With the temperatures over 40 degrees, we watched Lytton kind of burn to the ground, and I was in my solar panel cooled, well insulated home, thinking that I was kind of proud of myself for going with the solar panels as a good response to the heat, and actually earning credits with BC Hydro at the same time as I was running the air. And I see these incredible resources and money that you're putting towards this. And I just have to say, I sure wish that you were making solar panels, and that's all I'll say. Well,
I can certainly respond to that, but you didn't really ask a question, so I won't comment. But Fortis understands it, believe it or not, that we need to all be moving towards a cleaner future, and we are on the path. So we can talk more about that offline if you wish.
Director Herford.
Thank you. The community engagement slide that you used in your presentation highlighted some folks that you've been meeting with recently, and I'm happy to hear you met with Squamish Canyon again today. I think there's a lot of work to be done there. I'm curious, though, sort of looking forward, what sort of community engagement activities you should expect, say in the near term, for this project overall.
Well, we're certainly meeting ad hoc with people that contact us. We're getting a number of inquiries, both from folks that are on Finch and Industrial, which are the areas where the pipeline is planned to travel along, and elsewhere. So certainly meeting ad hoc with people that reach out to us. But in terms of our stakeholder engagement plan, we intend to continue to meet with recreational organizations, understand their requirements, and continue to meet with schools. We've met with several. We still need to meet with 2 or 3 more, and then a number of businesses along the route that is going to be directly impacted, and not for profits. We continue to meet with the Howe Sound Women's Center, Sea Sky Community Services. We're going to be reaching out soon to Squamish Helping Hands. Those are organizations that have certain concerns around worker behavior and how we're going to mitigate bad things from happening. And we take their concerns very seriously. So we're going to be continuing to dialogue with those folks, and we have been building a lot of their comments into our planning of how the Workforce Lodge intends to operate.
So then, thank you for that. So then we should be looking forward to seeing a aligned code of conduct between your workforce and WLNG's workforce going forward.
We've provided a workforce code of conduct to staff. Whether they're totally a copy and paste of each other, I can't speak to that, but I wouldn't think that there would be too much different between the two. But as far as holding both of them up to the light of day to look for differences, that just hasn't been done yet.
Reverend Mary.
Thank you, Gord, for the presentation. I've got a couple of questions for you. One was on your community tables. I wonder if there's an overarching community table. And do these community tables have terms of reference related to them?
Yeah, they sure do. And thanks for the question. This is the overarching community table. It does have a formal terms of reference, and we've recently changed it to take it all the way through construction. We intend meeting regularly with this group to monitor our performance around a variety of issues that have been expressed as concerns by the community. The community table is made up of obviously local governments like the SLRD, the District of Squamish, Indigenous nations, not-for-profits, business organizations, the BIA, Squamish Chamber, Quest University's there. Probably missing a few, but it's intended to be a broad representations of agencies and organizations that have an interest and an understanding of the different elements of the community that could possibly be impacted by our project, so that we can continue to listen to them and have that dialogue, and they can see our performance against certain metrics that we're having to monitor during construction.
Is your terms of reference online on the website?
That's a good question. It might not be, but if you like it, we can send it.
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay.
And I've got one more question. That's on the code of conduct. I'm currently working with BC Hydro on their big major project that they're doing in Ridge River Valley. And one of the things that they do with your code of conduct is have every worker that comes in, whether it's BC Hydros or contractors, sign it. So everybody signs it. So everybody's fully aware. So you may want to look at that for all those 600 workers.
Yeah, absolutely. A good comment. And that's the same thing that's going to happen here. What we've done is we've taken the code of conduct and we've created a variety of training elements. And these are online training, like many companies have adopted. We have one cultural sensitivity training for working in and around Indigenous people and on Indigenous land. The expectations of Fortis BC around worker behavior, both on and off the job, and what the consequences will be of contravening that. And so these training elements, I've gone through them. Our team has gone through these training elements, and basically you need to agree. It's a statement of agreement before you actually pass the test. So every worker coming on the project has to go through this worker orientation. And in addition to that, workers that stay in the workforce lodge will have an additional set of job rules. And these rules, again, need to be signed for and adhered to. And there will be a body of a group that actually manages lodge performance and worker behavior and deals with infringements.
Thank you.
Yeah.
George, you mentioned that you're discouraging people from staying in Squamish and that you expected that they would travel up from the lower mainland. I live in Furry Creek, Britannia Beach, just up the road. So there's people that will be coming past there, and there are places there where you could, if you had one, park a trailer and basically live. That wouldn't be a legal situation. It could be quite a nuisance depending on where they are. So if that were to happen, if we were to find these sort of impromptu camps being set up, what would our course of action be? Would we just call you and you would deal with it?
Yeah, absolutely. And on our website, we've got all of our contact information, emails, phone. We're monitoring those, and we have promised to respond within 24 hours. So whether the trailer is actually removed within 24 hours, you'll get a response. So our contractors are responsible to manage and monitor the performance of their workers, and we've built those requirements into their contract. So yeah, you contact us and we'll deal with situations as they arise.
Thank you.
So yeah, just following up on that, and I'm glad to hear that. But I have been hearing from community that workers are being told to just sort out their own housing, and they're trying to do so in campers and so on. I've also heard that Klahani is being used. I'm not sure if it's for Fortis or wood fiber workers. Can I take from that if we sort of went to check, there wouldn't be wood fiber and Fortis workers taking the Klahani sites as we go into our heavy tourism season?
I'm not exactly sure where Klahani is. I should know, and I don't. If you can remind me, but sorry?
Right there at Darrell Bay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let me know if there are Fortis workers staying there, and we will deal with that. They've been told not to stay in the Squamish area. That is the Squamish area. So if we learn about that, we'll deal with that.
Okay, thanks. And then just a follow-up, and I've sort of raised this with you before. I have I guess some concern with the community table terminology, but just for clarity, the attendance at that table is controlled by Fortis and the public is not invited. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's a closed forum, and it's by intention that we do it that way, so that we continue to add more organizations that add to the conversation constructively, and but it's not a public forum. We've had public forums that are consulting more broadly and engaging the public, but the community table isn't designed that way. That's right.
Thank you, through the chair. We had a presentation at the District of Squamish Council table yesterday from the wood fiber LNG folks, and some of them are your counterparts are here on this call today. We heard from them that they have made the decision to try and house their employees and their subcontractor employees on a flotel as a response to the feedback that they got from the community in terms of concerns of worker safety and interaction. I'm just curious why Fortis, who has received the same feedback, hasn't responded in the same way, and why there hasn't been any coordination with Woodfibre, given that they are paying for this project, to put all of the employees on the flotel that is expected to come to the community.
Well, I think the simple answer is that the location that's been selected, proposed for the Workforce Lodge, keeps the majority of work activity out of town, rather than having to cross House Sound and use Highway 99 and local district roads. So it's an intention to keep workers out of town. We heard that loud and clear from various community groups, and most of the pipeline activity will be up in the Indian River Valley. So the location of the Workforce Lodge keeps them proximate to that. I need to say too that this won't be a concentration camp, but it will be secure, and there will be card readers in and out. There will be rules around, time of use, and visitor policy very strictly adhered to. Alcohol consumption policies, drug policies. We're able to make sure that we manage worker conduct by having workers all housed in one spot, and that location seems to be a good spot related to the location of the construction.
And finally, can you just clarify if you're proposing to bus workers up from Vancouver, or if they're going to be driving themselves and expected to have their own personal vehicles on site?
For the summer, you mean during this summer?
During the work, when the work camp is operational?
When the work camp's operational, there will be a shuttle service from the lodge to key commercial spots in town. And workers, when they're after hours, for example, or on Sundays, will certainly be encouraged to use the shuttle service. There would be no reason why not to. We want to minimize the amount of personal traffic. Parking's already at a premium. We want to make sure that we don't add to that burden. And
Sorry, Gord, will workers be shuttled, like when they come up to camp? Will they be coming in a shuttle bus, or will they be coming in their personal vehicles?
They'll be coming in their personal vehicles. So that they will be parking their personal vehicles at the Workforce Lodge. And the reason for that is working 6 days, long days, and Sunday off, they do need to have personal time. And this is consistent with how other projects have operated their workforce. And you can't keep them in the camp all,
So just
all
taking
day,
a
every day.
perspective through the chair, taking a regional perspective, Sunday is typically the busiest day on the Sea to Sky Highway across our entire communities in the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District. So how do you anticipate to manage the additional 600 folks in their vehicles when it's already back-to-back traffic from Porto Cove to Whistler?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I think there's a couple of thoughts I've got. One is the people that we have leaned on to help guide the planning for the Workforce Lodge tell us that not everybody leaves the lodge on Sunday. There's a lot of the folks, provided the lodge is constructed in an attractive way with lounges and laundry facilities and so forth. A lot of folks will stay there. So not everybody's going to leave. We use the number 600. There won't be 600 people on the road on Sundays. But we're not going to be restricting worker movement on Sundays. If they want to head to Whistler, if they want to do some canoeing up there, head up to Pemberton, head down to the Lower Mainland, we need to allow them to that freedom of movement. Now, having said that, through the community table, we're going to be monitoring how workers impact the local highway, impact parking, impact traffic in town, and we have the ability to adaptively manage as we go. So while we're not seeing that there's going to be a problem, we will be able to adaptively manage that, and we'll be seeking feedback. Obviously, the district's going to be providing feedback, but through the community table as well. So we're not going to be going away. We're not going to be just abandoning the town during construction here. We want to work with you and make sure that we're leaving as light a footprint on town as we can.
Yeah, just on that note, I think one of the things you could consider is just messaging when people travel, because that is a major problem that you'll need to overcome, and thinking about it now and dealing with it now rather than then probably makes a lot of sense. But my question is related to temporary housing. One of the big wins of the 2010 games was that we didn't choose to go down the path of temporary housing. And I'm wondering if you've had any conversations with local government about permanence and leaving a legacy behind that isn't gravel parking lot when you leave town.
Yeah, the housing that is being proposed at this point is coming from a different project. So it is constructed to temporary standards. I think to design housing to permanent standards takes a tremendous amount more lead time, notwithstanding the availability of land to build it on, and the construction time frame and who's going to manage it afterwards and all of that. That's a lengthy process. So notwithstanding, we have been talking with the district staff about a legacy. We are prepared to provide funding towards something that's meaningful to the community, and we think that the district is probably a good place to have that conversation. Decisions haven't been made on where that money would be used, but we are in the middle of those conversations.
To be frank, this has been known about for a long time, and in the lead up to the Olympics, I think one of the values was to chase down legacies that were very clear to the community. And so I would have encouraged a few years ago, had we had the same conversation, to get to work on it then. And I think it's a mess, unfortunately. So thanks for the presentation today.
Thank you.
Anyone that hasn't had a chance to make the submission? Thank you very much to all of you for being here today, and we look forward to hearing more about how this project will impact our corridor as you move forward through your process. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thanks. Yeah. We're good? Yep. Everyone good? Okay, we're on 8.2.
Hello.
I'm
never getting red until they're on the space.
Let's talk about Pine Crest Estates land use contract discharge.
At the same time.
You don't
Personally, I
want
think this is, no.
No, okay. Everyone comfortable with the report as it was laid out? Yes? Okay, Director Rainbow is moving the first and second reading, waiver of the public hearing and notice of the waiver of the public hearing for the second part. So moved, seconded by Director Demare. Go ahead.
This is replacing exactly what is in the land use contract with the exact same kind of zoning. Are there any substantive differences at all that anyone can point to, or is it totally like for like? Through the chair, to whomever would know that answer.
Through the chair, they're not exactly the same, but this is at the request of the property owner that the underlying zoning apply to them. And we've discharged a number of these in the past, so I don't see a problem with it.
Highlights of the differences?
Oh, off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you, but the land use contracts are these old relics of the 70s, as you're well aware, and a lot of times they just contain wonky language and they're awkward for everybody to work with. So the underlying zoning is a lot more clear, and that would be the homeowner's preference. I can't recall in this case what the specific point of issue was, why they felt that they wanted to have this discharge, but originally they had requested to have this discharge when we last did it, and it looks as though that request fell through the cracks. So this is something we should have done a couple of years ago when we did the last batch of these.
Isn't it required to discharge these, or is that only in municipalities?
As of July 2024, all land use contracts in British Columbia will automatically be released by the province, and the underlying zoning will apply. This would just be a little bit early. Yeah.
And my final question is, our approach, we just discharged a whole bunch of these in Whistler, was like for like. Now, obviously the language will shift a bit, as you've said, clarity, there's a number of things that need to be acknowledged, but I just want to be sure that there's no substantive change as far as land use is concerned.
No.
Okay, perfect.
My reading of that was that the person living there wants to make some changes, doesn't come under our zoning right now, and wants to be able to apply for things according to our zoning. Did I read that wrong?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, so we're not giving anything up, we're gaining more control, you know. Next year it's not going to be automatic anyway.
Yeah, that's, don't we have work to do on this side to actually accomplish that task by 2024?
No, we've done all the land use contracts at this point. In terms of applying underlying zoning, where underlying zoning might not have existed in the past. So when the land use contracts go away, there will be underlying zoning to cover all land regulations for the entire district.
Thank you very much.
We have a mover. Do we have a seconder? Yes. Director Demare, any further comments? I'll call the question, all in favor.
So I'd like the minutes to reflect that Ms. Needham called the Director Compton a relic from the 70s. That's what I heard, so.
I concur. I think that's accurate.
I didn't feel attacked by that language.
I found it, it's true, so.
We're now at 9.2. He was.
Oh, yeah.
75.
Wow. Cute.
Oh, the 70s.
I didn't know those.
Let's talk about the House Sound Biosphere Initiative MOU.
Presentation.
Let's hear the question. Fantastic. Go ahead.
Question. Just curious, at the March board meeting, March 22nd, this is what a motion that was approved. That the memorandum of understanding with the House Sound Biosphere Region Initiative Society be referred back to staff for inclusion in the 2024 work planning and budget process. Just curious how it got on to here. So
Great question.
Yeah, so I'll take that through the chair. So because we have the capacity to do it, because we've shifted the climate action file to a part of the organization that can do the work. So this is going to happen from time to time, and it would come to the board in the quarterly updates. So we'll update that fuel every quarter, but our intent is to get as much work done as we can. So if there are items that might, if there are items in the fuel that we realize we can do in advance of when we might have been able to get to it, we'll simply do them and inform the board.
Thank you.
I'd like to move this one, option one.
Okay, moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Demerick. Comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your work.
1.3, addition to reserve. For the Hot Cliff addition to Fountain Indian Reserve number 3A. Yes. Annette, Miss Naden is here.
Perhaps we can start with questions. I'll call
Okay.
and see if she's.
Director Birchbaum, question. Here she is. Hello, Miss Naden.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Great to see you. We're on 9.3.
All right. Would you like me to run through the report or just be available for questions?
I think it would be helpful if you could take the top of the leads.
Okay. Yeah, so we received a letter from Indigenous Services Canada back in March regarding a proposed addition to reserve from Hawklip. The information about the parcel is captured in the report there, and there's a map as well. We did look into it, and I'm sorry, I'm just looking through the report here. So it's the parcel is currently federal land. It's in electoral area B. It's tax exempt, so there would be no financial implications to approving. Well, we can't approve the addition to reserve, but there's no financial implications if this goes from fee simple land to the reserve. It's immediately south of the Fountain Reserve number 3A. So there's a contiguous boundary, and it's north of a parcel that's identified as Crown land. And then immediately south of that is another Hawklip Reserve. So this would create, well, it wouldn't quite create a continuous boundary, but one thing that wasn't noted in the report, and I apologize for this, there actually is one parcel of privately owned fee simple property that is adjacent to that property. But there's no fee simple lands that would be landlocked as a result of having this parcel go to the Hawklip Reserve. So in the report, I move forward with some information about why reserves are created and how that all works. Local governments must be consulted, but we don't actually have any veto power with regards to reserve creation proposals. They can be created for several reasons. And the First Nation doesn't actually need to disclose publicly what those reasons are. So basically, there's really no impact to the SLRD in terms of whether or not we approve this reserve. And our policies do state that we're trying to build relationships with First Nations. And so supporting this application would help us to do that. So staff's recommendation is that we move forward with a letter to Indigenous Services Canada stating that we have no objections to the proposal. Thank you.
Questions?
Thank you, and thank you for your extra help, Jeanette, with my questions around the location. I would like to include in our comments, not back to Hackliff, but back to the Canadian government and the gentleman that presented us with this proposal, that this map was so poor. And you know what's wrong with the map. Labeling the highway as the Fraser River and just the orientation and the lack of information. Mayor Hopple and I both thought this was in a completely different place based on the information that we had. So I really would like to provide that comment because I've had staff running around. Thank you very much for this extra work to confirm where the other private property was that I was concerned about. And I have lots of questions and you've heard them and none of them are appropriate for us to ask. And so I just support this application and thank you for the extra work. And I really would like the comment included that that this could have been presented to us in a more professional and comprehensive way so that I didn't have all of you running around yesterday and today. Thank you. I have no opposition to this as it is, as I understand it now.
Cut me off if I start my questions here, but I have two questions through the chair. Is there any private properties on this addition of land? Or is it just bare land?
It's bare land.
Okay, and the property that is adjacent to it, are they notified of this change through the province or through us? Or is there any dialogue? Like, are they aware of this addition?
I am not sure about that, actually. I don't believe that they would be notified.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, with reference to a comment that Jeanette made that approving this or not objecting would help us in our relationship with First Nations. Are we obliged to just send a letter saying we don't object, or could we be more positive about that so that we fully, just the wording of our letter to sort of show that we support it? If you say you don't object, it's kind of.
Our role is to not object as far as I understand it. I had a number of other questions and comments, but we have a very limited role in this situation. And I think staff have answered all the questions that pertain to our role here. Of course, we support the initiatives of the First Nations and they don't have enough land to do it.
We can't say that in the letter, that we fully support it, which is in fact saying we don't object, just in different words.
I would defer to Ms. Nadan.
Yeah, it's thanks, Chair. It's an interesting question, and actually I contemplated that before I wrote no objections as opposed to support. Because it is a bit nuanced. And I did look back into some of our records. The only other time we've had, in addition to reserve proposal, was I think 10 or 12 years ago with Lillooet Nation. And the letter that we wrote said that we had no objections. So that's why I decided to write it that way. I mean, I don't think I don't see an issue with saying we support versus have no objections, if that's what the board decides to do.
Yeah.
Well, actually, my question is the same as Director Rainbow's, and unfortunately, I'll miss tomorrow, but looking at the agenda topics of reconciliation and United Nation Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, that really stuck out to me. I was wondering why we won't say we support this. It seems other things, I've seen that in resolutions, it's a positive rather than a negative resolution. And so, yeah, if there's hearing that there's no specific reason not to use that wording, I think I would feel more comfortable saying that we support this, given the information provided.
Maybe use both. We have no objections and we support this application.
There's an expert sitting over there. I think we should leave it to her. Give us some guidance. We want to show support. Do you need a resolution to this?
I don't think so. I think we're splitting hairs. And I think it's important that we've had this conversation.
Yeah.
And staff have heard us, and we'll draft the letter accordingly. This may not be the big act. The big act is the act of the relationships and of showing up.
Oh, sure.
Because this is just
Anything
going
else?
to a
Anything
staffer
else?
in Ottawa. This is not going to the nation. So
Well, they don't
not
get
that it's
a-
not
they don't-
important.
They don't get a copy of it?
I'm sure they.
Yeah.
It's probably, there are bigger moments for this conversation.
Sure. Okay.
I have a motion to support.
Change the wording to.
Yeah.
From.
Motion Director Birch Jones, seconded by Director Pettengill. Further comments? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Naden.
Thank you.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, 9.4. Caroline Creek Debris Flow Mitigation Project Status Update. Who are we here?
Happy to start, Chair. Good afternoon. And lovely to see you all in person this afternoon. We are just waiting for my co-pilot here to get connected. My name is Philip Campbell. I'm the project and program coordinator for the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District. I'm assisting to coordinate this project. And joining me today is the project manager, Mike Strain. He's coming from CapEx Project Advisory Services. Together we prepared this report for you. The information report that provides the cover, it's providing a bit of a timeline and some context to this project, appreciating this has been happening over many years, and there has been a lot of work with the SLRD and with the community of the Lillooet Lake Estates as well. So we've just put that together into a simple timeline to sort of to show you those key events, key reports, and recent board decisions as well. I would like to hand it back through the chair to Mike to provide the actual presentation, provided he is able to hear and see us okay.
Mr. Strain.
There we go.
Fantastic. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Philippa, for the introduction. Is there a presentation that we can bring up?
That is on the way.
All right. So I'm here today to give you a project update on the Caroline Creek Flow Mitigation Services Project. As Philippa mentioned, I'm Mike Strain, Senior Project Manager with CapEx Projects, and I've been engaged to deliver project management services for this project. Next slide, please. Brief agenda here. We're going to talk a little bit about project background and then scope, budget, schedule, and some of the risks and next steps. Next slide, please. So to provide some context here, we provide some background and a timescale of events that lead us to where we are at with this project today. As has been well documented, there were two major debris flow events that have occurred at the site, one in 2010 and one in 2013. Both events were approximately 30,000 cubic meters in volume and required significant remediation and cleanup. Following these events in 2014, a geotechnical assessment was completed and a do not occupy was issued,
by the SLRD for specific areas near the creek, which remain in effect today. In 2015 and 2016, the risks were studied further and a preliminary design was put in place that sought to reduce the risks. In September of 2022, the SLRD received a petition from Lillooet Lake Estates for service establishment and a loan authorization, which the SLRD adopted in December of 2022. SLRD has now applied for 2 grants, one through the Canadian Emergency Preparedness Fund and the other through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program. SLRD has been awarded $2 million through the Canadian Emergency Preparedness Fund and is waiting the outcome of the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, with results expected in September of 2023. Next slide. So the project scope is to design, construct, and establish operation of maintenance of a debris flow mitigation structure for the Catalina Creek at Lillooet Lake Estates. The structure is basically a wider and deeper channel with a series of berms to direct flow back to the channel. A 1,000-year return period for the debris flow event was selected as the design event, which has an expected debris flow volume of 100,000 cubic meters. The risk analysis conducted in 2015-2016 has determined that this level of mitigation would reduce the risk to a level similar to the risk tolerance criteria adopted by the District of North Vancouver and the group risk criteria adopted in Hong Kong and previously applied by the District of North Vancouver. Next slide, please. So the project is located just east of Pemberton on the north side of Lillooet Lake, with the creek passing through Crown land and land owned by LLE. So here you can see the LLE land is in the triangle shape there, and Crown land is on the other side. Next slide, please. The project includes approximately 900 meters of creek excavation and 970 meters of training berms to contain future debris flows and redirect them towards the creek channel so they can be conveyed through to the lake. In this diagram, you can see in the green is the channel, the blue is the berms, and the yellow there is the Forest Service Road bridge that is also part of this project to be replaced by the Ministry of Forests and coordinated through this project. Next slide, please. So here we see the profile of the proposed creek and berms at a particular location closer. This is closer to the top end of the project. So the green areas represent the excavation or the cut for the new channel, and the blue areas represent the berms or the fills. So you can see the existing creek channel between the left training berm and the future creek channel. It sort of gives you an idea of the scale of the new channel compared to the existing channel, with quite a bit more capacity. Next slide, please. So the current estimate to complete the project is 8.1 million. This figure does not include the Forest Service Road bridge by the Ministry of Forests, as may have previously been presented. It is important to note that this figure is based on the 2016 preliminary design Class C estimate, which was escalated in 2022 to account for inflation and to apply for grants. Because this is a preliminary estimate, the $8.1 million figure carries with it a certain level of uncertainty, which we've identified to be approximately 30%. So it is possible that this project could end up costing as much as $10.5 million. As the detailed design progresses, this level of uncertainty will become smaller as more details are finalized. The current approved project budget is $6 million and is funded through the CEPF grant and from LLE through the loan authorization bylaw, and is awaiting outcome of the ICIP grant to fund the balance of the project. The project is also applying for a third grant through the Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund as a potential safety net for the possibility that the ICIP grant is unsuccessful. To fit the project within the current approved budget of 6 million. The idea is to complete as much of the lower portion of the creek as possible. We are currently referring to this as phase 1 and will further define the extents of this phase through detailed design. Next slide, please. Since kicking off this project in March, we've developed a project charter to define the scope, schedule, budget, and resources allocated to the project. We've developed a project execution plan to set how the project will be managed and established a project steering committee to set out the framework for the project governance and oversight. We've issued an RFP for professional engineering consulting services, which closed on May 19th, and proposals are currently under review. We're in the process of developing and implementing communications and engagement plans, and we are about to start the engineering investigation and detailed design phase and plan to tender the construction work in early 2024. Due to the anticipated size of the project and the weather windows suitable for construction, it is expected that it will take 2 years to complete construction. So that's 2024 and 2025. Next slide, please. So this is a project with several risks. There are many moving pieces that all need to align in order for the project to succeed. A risk management workshop was held to identify as many risks as possible and develop mitigation plans for each risk. The top 5 risks identified by the project team are permitting and approvals, delays for which can cause negative effects on schedule and cost, securing land interests in time for construction, negative outcome of the ICIP grant application, upward pressure on costs that can come from many areas, including market conditions, ability to reuse soil on site, or schedule slippage and escalation, and schedule delays due to weather, such as heavy rains, snowmelt, or fire shutdowns, or due to things like construction productivity and poor coordination with stakeholders. Next slide, please. So moving forward, our next steps include awarding the professional engineering consulting services agreement, commencement of site investigations, detailed design, and the Crown Land tenure process, with the target of applying for permits and approvals by August of this year to set us up for construction next spring. Once we receive the outcome for the ICIP grant in September, we'll know whether the project can proceed in full or if it will need further funding. That about wraps up the project overview presentation. Happy to take any questions, and thank you for your time.
Just one question then. You mentioned the red and purple zones in that area, and they're under a do not occupy order. If all this were completed satisfactorily, would all of those properties be safe to occupy after that?
We are working with SLRD planning to determine that. We cannot guarantee at this stage that that will necessarily be the outcome.
Thank you. Through the chair, just wondering if somebody can remind me how much we applied for through the ICIP funding.
The ICIP funding, I believe, is in the $5 million range. So it would reduce the borrowing. The up to 4 million required would be significantly less.
I just wanted to clarify that it's under a do not occupy recommendation, not a do not occupy order. Give those red and purple ones.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? No other questions.
Receipt.
Move receipt. Moved by Director Richmond, seconded by Director Rich Jones. Further comments? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Call the question, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We're on 9.5, community wildfire resiliency planning or plans for electoral areas A and B, and we have Mr. Phillips here.
Is going to be joining us as well.
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me and see me?
Yes, thank you.
Good afternoon, board, and good afternoon, Chair Ford. Thank you for having me. I'm here to present CWRP for Area A and Area B. And if you allow me, I would like to present a really quick FireSmart update to the board before we commence. It will be just 2 slides, but I think it's worth sharing the good work that's being done by our community members. Is my presentation visible?
Yep.
Thank you. So SLRD FireSmart update. What are we doing these days? Last long weekend on Lake FireSmart Day, very good attendance. A lot of FireSmart home ignition zone were done. And here we see photos of the Pavilion Lake FireSmart Day that also happened mid on weekend. And a vegetation debris removal activity was also extremely popular. It was the first FireSmart activity for Pavilion Lake, and the attendance was quite overwhelming and very positive. So Fire Chief Van Cook is very happy with the results of this activity. How are we doing for FireSmart home assessments in the district? This year is challenging, not big numbers. However, we are successful in reaching new communities. So to me, it is a real success. Area A, 7, Area B, 13, Area C, 5, Area D, 23, for a total of 48. I want to notify that Strata leadership call me and book FireSmart home assessments for their entire communities at once. And to me, it is the most effective strategy to achieve resiliency at the community level. Working directly with Strata leadership is the way that I want the SLRD FireSmart program to go, because it is the most economical way of funding and time to be allowed to do home assessment. And so I am hoping in the future that the electoral area directors will help me in making this a new standard for the SLRD FireSmart program. So when the Strata president call me and say, I want to FireSmart my entire community, this is when our time is at its most efficient and effective. And so here is a list of other FireSmart activities that will be happening this summer and this fall in the SLRD.
Well, if I may just interrupt, it just your second slide isn't showing, I'm just seeing the first slide.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Select funds Firefox.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to fix that, but I think my comment is sufficient, and I can share that with the board afterwards. I just don't want to take too much time. So it was just a photo of the Pavilion Lake FireSmart Day and some numbers. Okay, so I am here to present CWRP for Area A and B. And so CWP for area C and D were completed in 2022, and so this year we have completed A and B. CWRPs are a framework that allows me to know where I can focus the mitigation efforts in the SLRD through the Fire Smart program. They are a list of recommendations based on the Fire Smart 7 disciplines, and each recommendation, each discipline is eligible for a funding from UBCM. I'm sorry, I'm just still trying to step out of this PowerPoint presentation. I apologize. Okay. So the way that I use the CWRP is that the CWRP will inform me of where I should focus for wildfire fuel mitigation as well. And so if there are opportunities to work directly with Ministry of Forests to get some funding to undertake fuel treatment, these are the documents and the mapping that I will, and the polygons that I will share with the Ministry of Forests to make this happen. So for an example, last fall, Ministry of Forests Cascade District up here in Northern SLRD has asked me if we could share in advance draft polygons for area A and B, because their cycle of funding is not the same as ours. And so the person asked me to share that, and I said absolutely. And so 3 months has passed, and the grant, the fund request that person made was accepted. And so there are now 150 hectares of fuel mitigation that will happen in area A. The bidding process should commence this summer. And so the work is to start in this winter and 2023 and 2024. And so, after this one, we will move towards the polygons of interest for fuel mitigation in area B. And yeah. And so it's just to give you an example of what CWRPs actually mean in terms of actual action in fuel mitigation on the ground. Are there any questions?
Does anyone have any questions? Right.
Thank you, Maud, for the presentation. Just curious on the treatment units that are going to be in area A. Is there any way I can get the KMZ or KML files for them?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yes, so the spirit behind the CWRP is that the information is to be shared with whomever it may be of interest. And the same can be said about
area B.
I'm sorry.
We didn't catch that.
Oh, I apologize. The spirit behind the CWRP is that these spatial data files are to be shareable with whomever find it interesting for them to have. And so I have shared them with our member municipalities and other local governments. And of course, I will share them with members of the board who want them. Absolutely.
Yeah, so
Just wants to follow on that. That's okay.
It was actually a separate item, or just adding to the conversation, but I should say through the chair, I think these CWRPs, I know it's been a great learning opportunity for me to get a better understanding of the communities. But these reports also, they have a list of recommendations that will inform our emergency program. They have fire service kind of recommendations as well as Fire Smart. And just wanted to note that fully recognize that there are some issues or some follow-up we need to do in terms of the community specific content. And so we would appreciate just another opportunity following this to meet with Director Demare and Director Birch Jones to incorporate that feedback to make sure that those reports are fully reflective of the environment.
Great, thank you.
Well, yeah, one more question is on the on the treatment units. Have they successfully got the funding yet to do the prescriptions?
For area A, yes. So the bid is supposed to come up at the beginning of this summer. And so the funding stream has been successfully obtained. And so the work is set to commence should the bid be positively responded to, yes, in winter 2023-2024. Hopefully, but yes, the funding has been.
The actual treatment of the units will be in 24.
Yes.
Prescription, yeah, okay, thank you.
Yes.
Can you hear me, Maud?
Yes.
I am so thrilled with this community wildfire RP, all these acronyms. I'm getting better at them. You kept me in the loop on this just the right amount. Thank you. And I would like to also add a few small comments to what's here, but I am overall like over the moon with the quality of this work and the detail in it. You got all the different corners and all the different communities in Area B, which is like an octopus of a region. It's very complex, and you've caught it and you've outlined it and you've detailed it. You can see the liaison work that's been done. You can see the enthusiasm. And when I talk to some of the leaders in the communities about these programs, they've already talked to you and they're ahead of me. And I just go, yes, it's comprehensive. It's accurate. The maps are great. Of course, I have some tiny comments about species at risk and so forth, but it's not important because you captured the species that need the habitats that you're identifying in terms of protection. And so that was like just another area where I was just going, check, check. It's really well written. I know there was a lot of staff, a lot of contributions into this plan. And in fact, I was at the brewery last weekend and somebody went, Director Birch Jones, have you seen your community? And I was like, I've seen it on Wednesday. It's really good. And it's just one of the people that had some contributions from one of the communities. And so you know that there's funds in Area B and Select, and Mickey Macrae set money aside. I've just followed in that tradition for any leverage or supporting, whatever needs to be done next. But the way that you've laid it all out and the priorities and everything, yes, you should share it widely. A lot of the content could actually be used in some of our other descriptions in Area B, like the OCP and so on, because they're so good. And I also appreciate that while this report was being produced, you were getting a heck of a lot of work done on the ground. And I really thank you for that. And Mike's not here, but I know he had quite a big hand in it too. And recently we had the round table with the tour of the community with expert Al Westhaver. And I know you weren't able to be there for all of that, but he, I think, really convinced the people of the urgency of the home fire smarting, but more on the neighborhood level, exactly like you're talking about. And so we're working on that in our neighborhood. And I hope that there's a whole bunch of other little champions throughout B that are also picking it up, because it's overdue. This work is overdue. It's a huge risk for so many reasons. And I'm just really grateful. I'm grateful for this work, and thank you. Yeah. I'd be really happy to move the
So there are 2 recommendations in the report, but we would probably recommend just a slight update that the SLRD adopt the Community Wildfire Resilient Plan for Electoral Area A as presented with additional feedback to be provided by the Area A Director and incorporated into the final documents, and the same for B.
Then I'd be happy to meet. Yeah.
So a question, when I read through the reports, and maybe I'm not fully understanding the recommendations, but it seemed like there's an enormous amount of really important work on a pretty short timeline. So I just, like, is this realistic? It just seems like, wow, this is these are ambitious plans to adopt. I'm just wondering if staff can speak to that.
Yeah, I can start to the chair. In terms of the recommendations, I'm assuming you're referring to that, it is ambitious, certainly. And it's part of the cycle and going into the next year's work plan. Definitely those will be, like, we have our work plan for this year, and these will be brought forwards and our team will work through it, because there are components for our emergency management team, our fire services. So though they are recommendations, they're not necessarily committed to in our work plan yet. So they will be brought forwards and considered.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
First, sir. Yeah, this CWRP compared to the CWPP that was done by Bruce Morrow back in 2018, 2019 is much improved. It's much more detailed, like the Director Bert Jones stated. I really like the content. I do have some issues with the maps, because you really have to zoom in and understand the maps. And most of the public wouldn't understand them. That's why I use KML files, and I actually do it on Google Earth, so they can actually see where these plots are. And you can zoom in and zoom out. And I do online meetings with people. So, but most people looking at those maps have a hard time looking at them. And that's why I prefer doing it on Google Earth. It really highlights where they are. You can highlight the private properties and everything else that goes along with it. So I'll move the Area A one.
Okay. Second by Director Rebo. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Now the Area B one, moved by Director Birch Jones, seconded by Director Rebo. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And thank you, Maud.
You're all welcome. Thank you.
We are now 9.6, which is an information report regarding this summer's Regional District Emergency Operations Center seasonal readiness.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair. And I will just introduce Mike Fusca, the SLRD's Emergency Program Coordinator, to present on this item. Mike.
Good afternoon, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Good afternoon, Chair and Board. My name is Mike Fusca, and I'm the SLRD's Emergency Program Coordinator. And I'm here to provide a brief update on our readiness of the Protective Services Department to respond to emergencies this summer. So this information report was drafted a couple of weeks ago, and since then we've had quite a bit of warm weather. Luckily, the SLRD hasn't felt nearly as much flood impact due to rapid snowmelt as other jurisdictions in British Columbia. Squamish Valley FSR did get closed last week, but those waters have since receded. And going forward, flood risk is now assessed to be driven more by rainfall rather than snowmelt. Having less snow in the mountains is obviously not great with respect to wildfire risk, but I should emphasize that by far the more important factor is weather. And given this inherent unpredictability, the Protective Services Department is focused on all hazards planning and exercises. So some recent examples of that. This April, our wildfire mitigation lead, Ms. Maud Lucier, conducted a wildfire scenario tabletop exercise for ourselves, partner governments, agencies, and First Nations partners in the District of Lillooet. Then during the first week of May, we conducted a test of our SLRD Alert mass notification system, along with many of our regional partners. Some of you may have received the notification on your phones of that if you're signed up for our emergency mass messaging. Then last week, our emergency management technician and Fettridge conducted a test activation in our EOC in the boardroom in Pemberton, where you are now. I'm also quite happy to announce that the SLRD has received funding from the Union of BC Municipalities to conduct a joint regional atmospheric river EOC exercise in October. And we have confirmed participation from the District of Squamish, Resort Municipality Whistler, Village of Pemberton, Squamish Nation, and Lillooet Nation for this joint regional EOC exercise. So there's more detail in the information report, but I think I'll leave it there and welcome any questions that the board might have.
Excellent. Thank you. Question, go ahead, Director Stone.
Thank you to the chair. Thanks for the information report and for all the prep work going into the peak season anyways. My question is on a section of the report that speaks to developing an EOC on-call framework so that we can better support staff as they manage their regular business workload. And this is a piece that I think we're all struggling with through the corridor in terms of our EOCs being operated or being activated for extended periods of time. I'm just curious if there's ongoing conversations at the regional level around how we might be able to better support each other when we have long extended activations on that on-call framework in particular.
Yes, through the chair. That has been, we have done some internal discussion and preliminary discussion with our regional partners. I think right now my emphasis is getting it really nailed down within our government. And then once we have a working model, it's easier to have a constructive discussion with our partners. So for example, things like joint comms, that's an area where we know that we really benefit from coordinating our public messaging. Another area would be GIS. We only have a small number of GIS staff, so if we could establish some kind of, regional pool where we could all draw on each other's resources to alleviate some of that burden. The short answer to that is we're working on it internally, and once we have a good working model, we have forums like the Sea to Sky Regional Emergency Program Committee meetings, where we could solicit these ideas and gain buy-in.
Great, thank you. All right. Would someone like to move proceed? Moved by Director Richmond, second by Director Jones. Comments? No further comments. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Fusta.
Thank you, Chair.
Does anyone need a 5 minute? Let's take 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the last one you went outside and just went outside.
Keep coming. Moving on. Try to lessen your. Hey.
Support.
I know you do.
I'm
All
in
right.
favor.
9.7. Any questions for the audit financial statements? And has not already been. No. Move proceed. Seconded by Director Mayor. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, just to receive the report from the Sea to Sky Destination Management Council, moved by Director Crompton, seconded by Director Mack. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. The Accessibility Committee report. Does anyone have any questions about this? We have staff available to answer questions should you have questions. Go ahead, Director Stoner.
Thank you through the chair. My only question was the staff report suggests that there would be a presentation of the board when determined by the CAO. And I just wonder if we want to do that at a minimum of an annual report, just so that we can understand how that process is going, especially given it's our first staff committee.
Yeah, to give some transparency around that. Is staff comfortable with that? Okay. So we could add that or
On an annual basis.
yeah. Okay. Any other questions? For you two, we are on the accessibility committee report, if either of you has any questions for staff.
Stipends.
Right.
Well, I think probably tomorrow we're gonna talk about Indigenous relationships, but in here there's a reference to paying some stipends for people to participate. Are we gonna deal with that as a separate kind of policy issue, or will we be paying stipends? Because we don't have any guidelines on that as an organization. That was my only question.
Thanks, Chair. So that was flagged that we do not do that. And so if that's something the board wants to look into, then we would take that direction. It would have to be part of next year's budget. That sort of thing.
Could we flag it as a bring forward, because it's come up as an issue on the Agricultural Advisory Committee too, for inviting some First Nations representation, and I'm sure it comes up on other committees, so maybe it's time to talk about that.
I wonder if there should be a part of the governance conversation that fit into that governance review. Because it's come up before.
Yeah, I think, so there were three sort of recommended solutions. I think all of them are, it's really up to the board. I mean, if there's concern over the timeliness of that and when we'd be able to pay stipends, then the quickest way might be to identify it as a piece of work to add to the fuel, and we can go take a look at when we can get at it. The governance review and doing it as part of the project maybe is the first way to look at it. Might take a little longer. But it's really whoever the board wants to pursue it.
And it's also a little larger perhaps, if it's just to look in the context of this committee, but we do have other committees as you.
It's a bit of a catch-22, but I think actually the accessibility committee would actually be really well positioned to advise on that question. We're talking about how we set up committees and how we interact and how we're able to recruit people. And so it may just be like pushing it down the road, but I feel like I want to refer it to this committee for their consideration around how accessible are, but they might not be there. So I think maybe we get a report back on how recruitment goes. And if it's really challenging to find the diversity of folks that we need on this committee, then we have a bit more of a short-term response from the board. But that is kind of the direction I'm leaning.
Just following from that a little bit, as this is a staff committee, assuming there's some sort of funding that would be applicable, staff could make that decision, or would this be at an amount or a sort of funding that there's literally nothing staff could do in this respect without a board direction in the context of this particular committee, which is a staff committee?
We have no budget attached to this work at this point.
Yeah, I've been involved in some honorariums with First Nations. And I look at, you got a draft in terms of reference now, right? I presume it won't get voted on until you got the other members, correct? The public members?
Well, these terms of reference are owned by the CAO, overseen by the director, by myself. But it will be the CAO's responsibility to make changes to them as the work progresses. And with that annual reporting, we report what changes and why.
I'm just looking at it, and if we're gonna have people traveling back and forth to come to these meetings, unless they're gonna be all virtual, which I don't think they should be, then you're gonna need an honorarium sometime.
Yeah, through the chair, I would offer, this sounds like a bigger piece of work to me. Notwithstanding that it would be good to hear from people that are on the committee, but it's going to start out as a staff committee, and I think this is a piece of work that needs to, go on our fuel and be dealt with through the work plan at some point to look at honorariums, perhaps not just for First Nations participants, but.
So you'd like a motion to that effect?
Let's hear from Director Crompton, and then we can put a motion on the floor.
I'm just gonna move that it be sent to the fuel.
Second.
That's it? That's the motion?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Is that that's I mean, obviously we need better language for it, but. send to the
Stipends
people.
for committee members.
Yeah.
Be
Yeah.
considered by.
Okay, further comments?
For all committee members or for specifically to this?
I'm happy for it to be general as long as this is as a specific part of that.
Okay. Call the question, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
That's it for the fuels conversation.
And then. So that was the motion just on that piece. Now we have the motion that's laid out in the package. To be updated, the second that would be that board be updated on the work of the accessibility committee on a schedule to be determined by the female, but at least annually. And then that the draft terms of reference and the staff development tool. Moved by Director, yes, yeah, we're moving all four. And moved by Director Stoner, seconded by Director Rainbow. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And 9.10, tell us statutory right of way for the Lillooet Landfill Road. We have Ms. Harris here. Is there any questions that anyone has? But
Okay, through the chair, I just wanted to know, is there any impact with this tell us right away that we should be aware of with regards to decommissioning? Because we're talking about decommissioning the landfill at a later date, but we're talking about financing that. Is there any impact with this tell us right away being on the same piece of property? Or they can
Belgium can probably answer that. Yeah, through the chair, where the conduit is currently situated aligns with the road. It's not on the active face of the landfill, so we wouldn't anticipate any issues with the decommissioning.
Okay. My second question, if I can ask too, is through the chair. $1, do you think, is that appropriate? Like, is there any lease agreement or anything that we could look at or tell us, or is $1 just the norm?
It is the norm, and they have also said that they will pay for any expenses that are associated with this public process, such as the notices that have to go in the newspaper,
right?
Around that, so they would be covering all of those costs. We want to chip into the landfill.
Yeah, we're looking for a lease. Is that an option?
I don't know. I think this is pretty routine stuff though. Like, I don't think this is a real revenue generating opportunity. If the board desires, we can go back, but I don't think that's, my sense is that's not the case. But again, I haven't looked into that. So it's really a discretionary move.
we have Chris again.
Seems that as a board, we've been pushing for more service and more connectivity and so on. So from my perspective, that's a reason why we wouldn't look to do it unless our goal is for the feds, the province to be funding this and us to be able to receive revenue. But I guess that would be my concern, is that consistency with that other advocacy we've been doing was too hard.
Understood.
But we wouldn't be out of pocket. So when you say they cover the notices, that's the stop time to prepare them and everything. Or do they prepare it right?
Through the chair, they would pay for any expenses associated with the advertising, not the staff time. But there also is a benefit to the landfill operations having that fiber optic. So from a customer service basis, when we're running our computers and tipping fees and the service, the front-facing service that we're giving to the public, the anticipation is that it will be improved because we will have better through our fiber.
Services are fine.
someone to make the motion as laid out? Moved by Director Hotwell, second by Director Demers. Further comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. Could we move on to? Okay, we're gonna do 10.2, which is a request from Director Demers for remuneration. Could I have someone make the motion as laid out? Moved by Director Crompton, seconded by Director Rainbow. Comment? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We're gonna do board roundtable if we have. I think we'll move that to tomorrow. Just because I want to give it some lots of time. Move that. 11.1 is a request for funding from Squamish Environmental Conservation Society, connectivity project.
Yeah, we talked about it. To say that we talked about it, yes, of course. As the area D director, I fully support this and did support it last year as well. What we want to suggest this year is that the funding doesn't come from area D, it comes from the southern pelt, which is shared with Squamish. So I would make a recommendation that we approve $20,000 from the southern pelt funds to be paid to the environment, the wildfire connectivity project.
Yes. Great. Further comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Yeah. Thank you.
For comments.
Thank you, Squamish, as well. No, I think that really appreciate the connection.
Good partnership, you guys.
That's right.
All right, this is a referral letter from Metro Van regarding their land use designation amendment to their 2050. Is that their OCP? No.
RGS.
Their regional growth strategy, thank you. Would anyone like to ask a question about this? Go ahead, Director Mack.
Yeah, it's just kind of ironic. We couldn't get 10 square feet out of our agricultural land, you know, with these guys, and here they are taking up 14.5 hectares. So that's 28 acres. And in Abbotsford, they're talking about taking out 125 or 30 acres out of the, you know, like it's just very hypocritical, I think. Here, like I say, we couldn't take a half an acre out because we destroy farming. Yet down there, this is done all the time. And it's going from agricultural to industrial. It's not going to residential or whatever. It's going to industrial. I just find that rather hypocritical. So.
Do you want to make a comment to that in our referral?
Yeah, sure. You can definitely quote me on that. The rest of the folks, how they want to, if they want to be involved in that. But yeah, that's just, I think it's very hypocritical.
Well, let's not confuse. Abbotsford is in FBRD. Not
No, we're doing this one here.
Yes, no, I know, but your comment was about Abbotsford pulling. Yes.
Okay, but
yes.
my comment applies to this.
Specifically to this one.
As
Okay,
well.
thank you. Sorry. Comment, Director Pettengill, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually want to reinforce Director Mack. I have concern, and when I look at our regional growth strategy and municipally, our focus on municipal boundaries and understanding the importance of that, our growth management boundaries, and all the work we're doing on food policy and ALR protection and so on, it does seem inconsistent with what we're trying to do in terms of protecting ALR and food production and growth management boundaries. So I think it's worth a comment.
I think that's worthwhile. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I think that the what they call urban containment boundary movement, like this is sprawl, whether it's residential, which tends to be the sort of the focus when we talk about the sprawl or this, and also agricultural land. I think it's absolutely worth commenting on those two aspects, which are counter to many of our policies that we work on around this table. So I would hope that this body could make comments to that effect.
Yeah, look at the size of this change. I'm just thinking about the presentation that Squamish Council had yesterday from the Squamish Food Policy Council. And they're so pleased if they can get an acre or 3 acres that is going to be used for farming. Half an acre, yeah. And here, they're just moving it. Think how much food could be produced on there. And they're just asked that, and we're growing in population. There's all sorts of reasons why we should be hanging on to this agricultural land as much as we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we should say that.
Yeah. I agree. Not both ways. Okay, so then I think the motion that we would put forward is that the board respond to this referral request with a firmly supportive of saving the agricultural land commentary that has been reflected in the board's comments. Is that enough?
Direct quotes from.
With direct quote from Director Mack.
All means.
Oh, but no, I don't want to make a joke of this. We can't protect agricultural land in one area and then give it up in another area for the sake of urban sprawl and say that agricultural land is important to us. We cannot support agricultural land, full stop, or we can't support loss of agricultural land. Thank you. It's been a long day. Director Hooker.
Yep. Thank you. I agree with that, but I do think that the urban containment boundary is an important mechanism for controlling sprawl in general, whatever it's sprawling into. In this case, it is at agricultural, so it's that and this compact communities and all those other things that we all, I feel that we all know around this area.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So
okay, who's moving it? Thank you. Seconded by Director Mack. Call the question, all in favor? Is there any opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. Note that. Unanimous. Thank you. All right. And 11.3 is the item that was in the it's 5.2 from the consent agenda. Director Samara.
Thank you, Chair Board. Yeah, I was always under the impression that these payment in lieu of taxes came from the actual infrastructure, you know, and let's say for Area A, we've got the 2 dams and the two reservoirs and the 2 dams. I did contact Assessment BC because I was really interested in how they would, if all the work that's going to be done at La Joy Dam, how it impacts the assessment. They're going to get back to me because it has to be new equipment that goes in. It can't be upgrades. But I looked at this, how much Vancouver's getting. They're getting school taxes paid. They're getting PILT funding, and it just blew my mind. I had no idea that they would also get it. So the reason they get it, because it also includes transmission lines, transformer stations, and so on and so forth. It actually goes on the value of the land. So if the taxes are on the value of the land that is affected by their infrastructure. And that's why the SLRD only got 1.57 million, where other places got a heck of a lot more than we did, especially in urban areas. I just want to share that with you.
Doesn't include transmission lines, does it?
Some programs like Fish and Wildlife Compensation Program, they don't touch the transmission lines. So the hydro definitely makes that distinction. And I do believe the compensation is usually just attached to dams, canals, like water infrastructure. They don't touch the transmission lines in my experience.
If they do, they owe me some money.
And you actually do get, you know, money. And just look at that chart there. Yeah.
So with that, would you like to move receipt?
Yes, move receipt.
Second by Director Richmond. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Was there any other late business? No. Are there any notice of motion? Notices of motion? I don't know. Seeing none, we will reset this meeting until tomorrow, where Director Birch Jones will preside as chair of the committee of the whole, and the loan outstanding item from this open meeting is 10.1.
Yes.
People. You can manage it.
Stop what?
Motion to reset.
15 minutes each.
I am poser.
That's, I like it.
Okay.
There's
Moved by
so,
Crockett,
there's
second by Herber.
there's so
Any
few
opposed?
chances to impose it.
It's a slippery
Don't
slope.
take a resolution,
I just did it.
impose it.